My man Wes. The memories. Pokémon Colosseum is a spin-off Pokémon game that released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2003 for Japan and 2004 for the rest of the world. This game is so different in many ways from your traditional Pokémon game, which is one of the reasons why it's highly underrated, in my opinion. If you were to play it now, some of the older, outdated features may frustrate you, like it did with me when I replayed it recently, like the insanely slow battles and limited Pokemon you can capture and stuff like that. But this just screams a poor remake or even a sequel to me, which I know will never happen. Before I get into the video, I just wanted to quickly mention Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. I know this game was the sequel to Pokemon Colosseum and does have a different story along with more Pokemon to capture, but from what I just played, I preferred Colosseum as a whole. They were both great games, but the focus of this video is going to be on Pokemon Colosseum. So let's go through the reasons why this game is highly underrated for the time it came out and how some of its features still beat Pokemon games to this day. Point number one is the protagonist that you play as in this game, which is known as Wes, an ex-Team Snagger member, which is basically the game's version of Team Rocket or Team Magma, for example. I mean, just think about that for a second. Instead of playing as the typical 10-year-old boy, you are basically an ex-criminal who rides around on a strange-looking motorbike, if it's even called that. I mean, just look at him, he's so badass. Not to mention your starter Pokemons in this game are an Umbreon and an Espeon. They start at like level 22, I think, and I think Umbreon's like level 24. I can't remember exactly. And in terms of Wes's age, it's not specified, I don't think. But just as a whole, I think this character, the way he looks, the way he acts, his backstory is so cool and makes such a nice change to just the traditional 10-year-old boy on his 10th birthday, starting his Pokemon journey, wants to catch all the Pokemon, whatever. This guy is badass, alright? That's my point. Point number two, the music. I know pretty much every Pokemon game has great music, but what separates Colosseum is the unique storyline this game has. With it being so dark and gritty, the soundtrack really has a chance just to be different than other Pokemon games. Tracks like Pirate Town truly make you feel like you are in a bad neighborhood. The Under makes it feel like you're going to get jumped literally any minute, and the occasional train sounds in the background almost sound haunting, like a reminiscence of what this location once was. I would really recommend checking this game's soundtrack out. I won't play it in this video for too long or for obvious reasons, but seriously, check it out. I mean, it's not just those two, they're just examples. You've got the battle music, the stadium music. It's just, as a whole, this game just has a really unique soundtrack to it, and a lot of people are still listening to it to this day. It's just, honestly, check out the soundtrack, it's amazing. Point number three is the All region, which is the region the game itself is based in. We have had 7 different regions now, and in November we will be on our 8th with Pokemon Sword and Shield on the way. Even with the game being 16 years old, the All region still feels like a unique region in many ways. And if it was to have a bit of a polish and maybe some more expanded areas, even some newer areas, just to erase the graphical and hardware limitations the game faced 16 years ago, I think it would be absolutely amazing and would be one of the best regions in the entire Pokemon franchise. I mean, just listen to some of the backstories of these locations. I'm going to go through 2 in particular which I feel best represent the region. So the first one is the Under. The Under was originally an artificial town constructed for the convenience of the miners of Pirates. Instead of having to commute between Pirate and the mine each day, the workers assigned to the dig in the mine would stay in the Under instead. When the mine closed, the miners chose to remain in their new adopted home. Now, most of the Under is populated by the descendants of the original mining crew. The original inhabitants that still live in the Under are quite old, but are fond of telling stories of when the mine was in its prime. Since the Under is a full-fledged city in itself, many of its inhabitants have rarely, and in some cases never, have been to the surface. It is for this reason that the residents tend to be suspicious of those visiting from Pirate. A fenced-off area in the southeastern portion of the Under serves as the town's makeshift prison. It is in this structure that the visitors from the surface are occasionally detained. And then the second one I wanted to go through was Pirate Town, which obviously mentioned in this one is the town above the Under. So, Pirate is an honourable town of thugs and scoundrels where shadow Pokemon were once distributed before the player and Rui, I hope I said that right, I know some people say it differently, before Rui put a stop to it in Pokemon Coliseum. Once a mining town, most of the residents have restored to a life of crime since the town's livelihood began to wane. However, rumours about the levels of crime in Pirate appear to be exaggerated slightly. It is said that people who stay in Pirate for a long time take on the town's characteristics. Pirate is known locally as the town of Earth, Wind and Money. This is just a few of the stories behind the places, and they just fascinate me. I feel like they represent the game, like the game's darkness and grittiness best, but there are other places out there that do represent it really well. But yeah, they just fascinate me, those stories, so much. Point number 4, the story. Of course, how could I not talk about the story as a whole in this game? I mean, the fact that you are playing as an ex-gang member is cool enough to me, but Wes's job is even cooler in my opinion. So the main quest in this game is to go around capturing shadow Pokemon, which are Pokemon whose hearts have been shut artificially and are not afraid to attack different Pokemon at full force, even trainers. Wes takes these from trainers, which in the game is referred to as snagging, and then restores them to become normal again. You also battle through different thugs and take them down one by one and have a chance to capture different legendaries in this game. Overall, the story in this game is just pretty solid. I mean, you got to sort of save the whole region from this gang who just wants to take all the Pokemon, turn them into shadow Pokemon and then sell them on, because they believe that the true power of Pokemon is unleashed when you turn them into these crazy beasts. But yeah, overall this game's story is solid. It could do with some improvements here and there, which I feel like would be improved if the game was to be remade or something, but story's pretty solid. The fifth and final point is just the fact that this game was the first ever Pokemon RPG to hit a home console. And although it isn't perfect, it was still a great game in my opinion. It wasn't a mainline game, it wasn't a core RPG like the Sword and Shield, Sun and Moon, etc. But it still did a lot of great things and added cool concepts that seem to just be lost now. If this game was to be remade or even had a sequel, they could expand on the story mode so much more, add all these different features, add different game modes and stuff like that. They could add more shadow Pokemon. Just the new Pokemon we have now, imagining them as shadow is so cool to me. They could have a bigger region with more areas and stuff. But I really don't see this happening, honestly. The darker days of Pokemon are over. Even the rivals in the game now are just so kind and cheesy to you. I mean, it kind of sucks. I mean, we do have that new one in Sword and Shield who looks like he could be a bit of an ass, but hey, it's not like the old days where Blue is just constantly making fun of you and stuff. Those days are gone, unfortunately. I would say the most likely thing would be if GameCube games eventually came to Switch, like the NES and SNES games have. Again, I see that as unlikely. I don't know why. They could even put these games on the eShop and sell them at like a fair price, and I'm sure people would just buy them straight away. But Nintendo sometimes seem to not like making money. I don't know. I always thought a 3DS remake of this game would have worked pretty well. Like how they did it with Luigi's Mansion. I feel that it would have worked pretty well in my opinion, but hey, those days are over. It looks like the only way left to remember the Ore region is through Shadow Pokemon in Pokemon Go. And of course Shadow Mewtwo and Pokken, but that's not even the same. I mean, hey, come on, they didn't even add Wes to Pokemon Masters, like, what?